Hey, Andrei Denisenko here, and welcome to day 3 of this video series about 3 massive mistakes people who stutter are making that keep them away from fluency. We've covered 2 first massive mistakes: sitting in the shell and pretending to be normal. They're pretty conceptual, but believe me, they set the foundation for our success on the road to freedom from stuttering. And a lot depends on whether we manage to find ways to put the key takeaways of these 2 mistakes into practice. And the key takeaways are seemingly simple ideas: going outside of your comfort zone and accepting your weirdness, especially on your way to fluency. And it's easy to lose track, so we need to come back to these basic ideas day after day. I like this quote by Zig Ziglar. People often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. Stuttering is an iceberg with speech impediments on top of it. That's something we all see. And the body of the iceberg holds our fears, shame, desire to hide the impediment. Actually, the first 2 massive mistakes, sitting in the shell and pretending to be normal, that's the core of the iceberg. Now it's time to talk about the massive mistake we're making when addressing our speech impediments, the very top of it. And when we get practical and start talking about impediments, we wait for a magic trick to be revealed. Well, getting free from stuttering is like learning a foreign language. It takes time and consistent effort. We don't usually expect to learn a foreign language by learning a trick, right? So why do we want to get free from stuttering by discovering a magic trick then? There's no trick, but there is a technique, and we'll talk about it. So to begin with, our speech is highly automated. That's something we want to realize. Imagine you're playing tennis. Your partner serves and you're rushing to send the ball back. So when you approach that little fuzzy ball, how much of your effort is automated and how much of it can you control? Well, you don't control it much. Maybe 5-10%. But the truth is, it's mostly automated. It's all that you've learned before. And we know that it's much easier to learn from scratch than try to learn when you already have a wrong pattern. Now, we already have our impediments, or blocks, repetitions, prolongations. There is something to heredity, something to background, to the environment. I'm leaving the topic of causes of stuttering aside. We're somehow predisposed for that. That's part of our nature. So it's an automated pattern that we've built and that we have now. How much of it do we control? Maybe 5 or 10%. When we do speech exercises, we mostly affect this 5 or 10%. When we try to control our speech, in fact, we control only that tiny part that we can control. But we also have the roots of our speech, and it's highly automated, and it highly reflects the environment we're in. If we go from the comfort of the room where we get therapy to our high-pressure everyday environment, in other words, to the situation where we don't control it much, where it goes mostly automatically, we reproduce automatically that speech that we had in such environment. we're reproducing our automated stuttering pattern. We come back to the place where we had been before. That means that our speaking goes largely irrespective of all our efforts to control it. And just let it sink into your mind, really. I don't mean the content, words, and meaning that were put there, of course, but speaking as a process, it goes largely, and I would say mostly, irrespective of all our efforts to control it. So the idea is that we want to build a new automated speech pattern free from stuttering, rather than try to control our speech while we're speaking. How do we do that? Well, I'm not going to overwhelm you with science and research, but there is certain connection between motor skills and development of speech. Those kids who advance in developing their fine motor skills do much better in developing their speaking skills. There's a link between part of the brain that is responsible for our speech and fine motor activities of our hands and fingers. So in the method that I used and in the technique that I'm preaching about, we synchronize saying sounds and words with movements of our fingers. To be more exact, we extract sounds by pressing our fingers on a thigh. It can be another part of the body, but the thigh is the most natural one, because when you let your hand be loose, it doesn't matter sitting or standing, you find your hand somewhere around your thigh. The difference with most therapies, where we try to control our speech using different tricks and exercises, is that by using your hand, you make sure that the new speaking skills go under your skin and become a new automated pattern, become those 90% that we don't control. So when we try to control our speech, in most cases we don't reach fluency because we don't develop a new automated pattern. And that's the third massive mistake we're making. We're staying with the current stuttering pattern. We can improve this way, but not get fluent. Now, I'm not saying that there is no point in doing exercises and trying to improve. In fact, I have an entire Improve program dedicated to improving your speech. But when it comes to fluency, we don't want to rely on controlling something that is supposed to go mostly automatically. What we want to rely on is building a new automated pattern to replace our current stuttering pattern. Now, what we can say about this new pattern and about this technique. First, the big difference with some other therapies is that we don't want it to be monotonous or robotic. We start with simple sounds and words, so it's much slower at first, but we want it to be natural. So we use our voice, intonation, we want to give colors to our speech right from the start. Second, glasses help you adjust your bad side so that you can see better, but they do not fix the problem. Some tools and devices out there work the same way for stuttering. We're not adjusting. We're fixing the root problem. Third, this is not our new speech. It's just a tool. It's granted to us by nature. We use it as a train, ship, car, airplane, call it whatever, but it's a vehicle that helps us get where we want. And some critics call this method and technique crutches. And well, one day I got hit by a car and my knees were hit badly. One knee was broken, it was all in dressings and bandages. I just couldn't move it for at least a couple months, so I did use crutches. And then I got better and I didn't need to use them anymore. So it's more or less the same thing here with using our hand and fingers. It's an inconvenience, but as you build up your new automated speaking pattern, you don't need to use your hand anymore. So we don't replace our speech with this technique for good. We use the technique to break free from stuttering to our natural speech. And there's a big question, what is our natural speech? Yes, we're predisposed to stuttering. There's something about our nervous system that's part of our nature, but I believe, I claim, I argue that our stuttering speech is not our true speech. It's your new fluent speech with all the colors, intonations, whatever you can imagine and put in there. That is your natural speech. And there's a way there. There was a story about wild animals that were put in a cage. It was a scientific experiment, actually. And first they were furious and they tried to get out of the cage. And then they got used to it and they stopped trying. Then after a certain time, the fence of the cage was put at a lower level so that they could jump over it. And the experiment was to see their reaction. They didn't move. They didn't want to get out. They didn't bother at all anymore. A similar thing happens to us when we stutter, and oftentimes all our efforts to improve don't seem to bring any result. So we need to develop that skill back again. We need to learn to leap, and we've got to start with the very low bars. But we need to start building confidence that in fact we can do it. I remember the biggest shift of mindset for me was when we went to schools and gave short presentations there as part of therapy. I was using my hand and I spoke without stuttering at all. It was pretty slow and strange speaking, but it gave me confidence that I can speak without stuttering in any high pressure situations. And for me, it was like learning to fly. Then I messed it up a lot. I had to come back to therapy and even do it on my own. But I had that feeling, first-hand feeling, that I can do it. I went through that, I experienced that. It was the best motivation, the best guidance on the way I could imagine of. Better and stronger than any words and persuasion. Getting free from stuttering is quite an adventure. It's not easy, it is difficult, but I'd love to guide you there step by step, and we can talk more about it. So I'm inviting you to my Improve program, where you can see the method more closely, where you can ask many questions, and where I'll be happy to tell you and show you more. We need to start taking our first steps, and that's the one you can surely make. So thank you for watching. Now you've learned 3 massive mistakes that keep us away from fluency. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you inside the Improve program.